So I'm not sure how many of you have kind of joined us on our Grand Theft Auto online live streams, but I've mentioned every now and then that I have a big love for Crash Bandicoot, and I'm incredibly excited for the remaster, which is Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy. I think that's the name. I keep getting the name wrong. I just call it the Crash Bandicoot remaster to the guys. But I'm very, very excited for it, but I've realised I've not really explained why. Now, before I kind of go off into explaining things, what you should know is this is completely off the cuff. I'm not writing a script. This is not like what I've done previously with the colour orange. This is completely off the cuff, and I'm just kind of talking off my head, so it might come across as a little bit gibberish whilst I just kind of gather my thoughts. But, like I said, I've talked about Crash Bandicoot before, and a couple of years ago I actually did a mini documentary series called The Colour Orange. It's not very good. It was before I went to film school and kind of understood editing and sound design and all that sort of stuff. But in that I kind of discuss how Crash came to be and the games, what impact they had on the industry and on the PlayStation, and how a lot of the PlayStation success is owed to Crash. But I didn't really discuss my personal experiences with the character or with the franchise and explain really why I'm so excited. So for that I need to kind of take everyone back to 1997. I was 7 years old, and it must have been Christmas Day. I was a very lucky boy. I got a television, but I also got a PlayStation 1. I must have been one of the last guys in my friendship group, and my group of friends, my gang. We called them the gang, realizing how probably really bad that was actually to be called. But I was probably one of the last in my friendship group to actually get the PlayStation. Now, I'd played it before. I think Cool Borders was one of the games I had played before, and I was blown away by it. Any fucking 7-year-old would be. But I was blown away by it, and I asked for it for Christmas, and I got it, surprisingly. And one of the games that I got with the PlayStation was Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. Now, I didn't really know Crash Bandicoot at the time. I didn't realise like how important the character would become to me personally from a gaming standpoint. I was actually more excited for the other game that came with it, which was a game called Small Soldiers, which is a tie-in to the movie of the same name, which has Tommy Lee Jones as the villain. His voice is Major Chip Hazard. Think of like an evil Buzz Lightyear, but not a Buzz Lightyear. He's like a military guy. So I played Small Soldiers a lot. I didn't really play Crash that much at the time when I first got it, because I was more into Small Soldiers. That was a big movie of 1997. That was the one that I really was excited for. And I think once I kind of fell out of love with Small Soldiers because I just found the game too difficult. My dad completed it, weirdly enough. So I went on to Crash Bandicoot. It was the only other game I had, and I was just instantly hooked. I thought the game was awesome. One of the things as well was when I was younger, I was a huge fan of the Looney Tunes. Much to Sam's annoyance, Space Jam was probably my favourite film as a child. So I loved the Looney Tunes. And Crash was very similar to Looney Tunes. He kind of looked a bit like a Looney Tune. His death animations were very Looney Tune-like. When he got squashed in the snow level, it was he was basically a Looney Tune, but he was a video game Looney Tune. The environments were just lush. You had the jungles, you had the snow, even the sewers just looked amazing. And to me as well, the game was just incredibly deep. There was so many little hidden gems, literally, actually. So many little hidden things that really enticed me to keep replaying it. I remember, I think in one of the snow levels, you can see the red gem. And I was always thinking, how do you get to that? And then hearing about there's a 6th warp room with hidden levels, and you have to go onto a certain level in the main game, and then you go onto an island and it warps you. Like, to me, it blew my mind. It was something that now seems so obvious. I mean, especially when you compare it to something like Grand Theft Auto, which is just so ridiculously big. It's crazy. But to me, Crash Bandicoot was something so different. But you've got to remember, I've got to compare it to a movie tie-in game, and that we all know how notoriously bad they can be. So because of that, I just played Crash Bandicoot religiously. I wanted to get everything I could. I wanted to complete the game 100%. I tried to find cheats. There were none. Crash Bandicoot was one of the few games in the PS1 era that had no cheats. So then, knowing it was a sequel, I also got the first one. I won't explain the story of how I got the first one. It's not a very nice story. Not very proud of it, but I got my hands on the first game. And I think I was a little disappointed by the first game. I've explained in The Color Orange that the game, even back then to me, it didn't control very well. It was ridiculously hard. To say it was a game that I thought was aimed at children, I say I thought because the difficulty was just ridiculous. Even not trying to get 100%, just completing it, which is crazy because when you play the final boss of Cortex, he's crazy easy. But the main story was just very, very difficult, I remember. So I didn't play Crash 1 that much. Crash 2 I just would not let go. Crash 3 I eventually got, and whilst I enjoyed Crash 3, I don't think I connected to it as well as the others. Now, it's definitely, to me, a superior game to Crash 2 in many respects, in many ways, but it's kind of like with Pokemon. I know it's a very strange thing to compare it to, but you look at Generation 1 and Generation 2 of Pokemon, you know, Generation 2 is far better than Generation 1. Just the mechanics of the game are deeper, the fact that it's graphically better, there's more Pokemon, there's 2 regions. It's overall a far superior game. And yet Generation 1, Red and Blue, that's the game that people remember because that is the one that people played more. And that's the same with me. I know Crash Bandicoot 3 is technically a better game in every respect, most respects, than Crash 2, particularly the final boss. But for some reason, Crash 2 was my game. I think it might have been because I got Crash 3 later than everybody else. I didn't get it on release day. I got it, it must have been 1999 when I got it, so I didn't play it that much, especially because Crash Team Racing was coming out at the time. So I didn't play Crash Warped as much as I think I should have. And then I got Crash Team Racing. That was another game that I played religiously to the point where it is like I wouldn't say I'm undefeated, but it's very difficult for me to lose that game. I loved Crash Bandicoot 2 and I loved Crash Team Racing. I really liked Crash 3. Crash Bandicoot 1 was very difficult. But then we get to Crash Bash, which was 2000. Naughty Dog had let go of the license and it had been picked up by another game. I think it was Euro something. I can't remember. I'm very sorry. And I feel like looking now, I gave it a pretty bad review when I was doing The Color Orange. Looking back now, I stand by my sentiments and my thoughts of Crash Bash. But what I didn't realise was that the game does actually seem to have some sort of a following. People do really like it. Fair enough, everyone's different, everyone has their own opinions. It wasn't my favourite game, and I think that's kind of where I started to fall out of love with Crash Bandicoot. I remember getting Wrath of Cortex, and again, feeling very disappointed. It felt like Crash Bandicoot Warped, remade on the PS2, but remade quite poorly. I didn't like the story, I didn't like the main established characters were barely used, it was all about other masks. I didn't enjoy that aspect. And then there was Crash Nitro Kart, which then felt like a poor remake of Crash Team Racing. Again, that seems to have its own following, but it's not my favourite game. And then the one game that I stand by, which seems to be unpopular for the most part, is Twinsanity. I thought that was a game that kind of went back to the roots a little bit. It was very Looney Toony, it was very silly, and I liked that. And I liked the story. I liked the idea that Crash and Cortex had to work together for once. It created a new dynamic with these characters. And it was also, I don't want to say it was an open world, but, you know, to me it changed the formula a little bit. And that's something that I thought that was needed for Crash to survive in today's environment. I think I may have been wrong, because then it went into Crash of the Titans, I think it was, or was it Crash Mind Over Mutants? Something like that, and the character just kind of tailspinned into a mountain and just absolutely failed. And I think the last proper game on a console that we had from Crash was like 2010, which I think was Crash Mind Over Mutant or Crash of the Titans. It's one of the two of that terrible series. And Crash was kind of dormant. And I remember when I did my Color Orange series, I remember saying right at the very end that PlayStation or Naughty Dog, whoever has the rights to those games, they needed to do a remake. They needed to just remake Crash and release him back into the wild, essentially. You know, you had Pokemon with Fire Red and Leaf Green, that was a remake. Tomb Raider, not quite a remake, but a retelling, and that was far superior to the original. And I said, if you just did a remake of Crash, like, it would be very, very popular. It would get traction. And I think I was right. And I mean, what really sold it, I think, for a lot of people was Uncharted 4. And I know it's a very strange thing to bring up Uncharted 4 if you don't know what I'm going to talk about. But if you do know what I'm talking about, you know why I'm talking about Uncharted 4. There is a part in Uncharted 4 where you get to play an original Crash level. Now, it has been altered a little bit to fit in with the slight dynamic of the storytelling. I know it sounds weird to say that. I don't want to give away too many spoilers. It's not quite the same Crash level, but it is Crash Bandicoot Boulder Dash, I believe it was. And it is the level. And I think people were shocked and amazed and just like thought it was so awesome that Crash kind of lived again, even if it was very briefly, as an Easter egg. Lived again in not just any game, but a Naughty Dog game. The guys who made the original Crash. And it wasn't this fucking shitty Crash with his like fucking tattoos on his hands or whatever. It was a Crash Bandicoot 1 game. Like, it was the original Crash that we all knew. And I think that's kind of what sold Activision. Now, I think they were probably obviously having it in development. Uncharted 4 is not that old. I think it came out in, now I might be wrong, 2015, I think it came out. 2016 at the latest. So I don't think it, especially knowing what Vicarious Visions has done, or Activision, whoever has it, I'm really sorry, like I said, this is totally off the cuff. Knowing that they have basically remade the game from the ground up, like it had been in the works for a while, but I don't think anyone really, I expected it to be a big thing, but I'm just so glad that Crash is coming back out of retirement, even if it is just a remaster and it's nothing else. I'd love for a remaster of Crash Team Racing, but you know what, I would rather take this trilogy over no Crash, and I just am so excited that not only will I be able to relive the games, but relive it in a way that's new and different, and a way that I don't think will make fun of the original games. It's no secret that at least the first game, and definitely, and a little bit of the second game, it has aged not very well, and I think it's needed to bring those games back up. And I'm very excited that the character is going to be reintroduced to generations who haven't ever played it. You know, you've got to remember, I'm 27 now. The Crash Bandicoot 1 came out when I was 6 years old. That's 21 years different. There are kids now with a PS4. They probably have heard of Crash Bandicoot, much like they've probably heard of Pac-Man. Maybe not to the same level. I think that might be, even for me as a Crash fan, that might be a bit of an exceeding expectation of knowledge there. But regardless, they might know who Crash Bandicoot is, but they never played those games. They're not available on PS4, or they just thought they were too old and too uncool. Now that it's going to be reintroduced, and I'm hoping that this is going to be a new, fresh lease of life for the character. I'm not necessarily expecting remakes of Crash Team Racing or Crash Bash or Wrath of Cortex. Maybe they'll take it off into their own direction and just make a brand new timeline and, you know, have a legitimate Crash 4. Who knows? But I'm just incredibly excited because it's kind of just being able to relive my childhood, but in a way that is different and unexpected. So, yeah, I have pre-ordered it. I'm getting it on day one, and you can best believe that I'll be doing a Let's Play.